the danger that we face with pornography. And I keep saying that, look, we don't need to rewrite the script. Today in the United Kingdom, for you to access a pornographic website, you need to put your driver's license for them to be able to determine that you are 18 years. Ask yourself why they are doing that. Because they've seen the danger and the damage that pornography and over-sexualization have done to a generation of young UK citizens. And that's why for us, we believe that in Ghana here, and we're working with going to cabinet on that, to make sure that before you access any X-rated site, you must put either your driver's license or your national ID card, so that we know who you are and who is going to that site, to prevent children from being exposed to such content. This is the real threat. Because when a child is over-sexualized at an early age, it affects their development, it affects their thinking, it affects even their morality and their values and their standards. And the only way to break a people is to go after the children. Because when the children are destroyed and damaged, that culture, that culturalization gets damaged. The fight against Africa is not against those of us sitting in this room. We were a lost case. The fight is against our children. And that's why when myself and my colleagues in Ghana introduced the Family Values Bill, one of our key arguments has been that we're fighting for the innocence of Ghanaian children, because our children must be protected and safe. We were protected by our parents in an African family setting. We must do same for our children and grandchildren. Ask yourself, and I see my executive director for the Data Protection Commission is in the room here. I referred to him a memo that had been, or an agreement that had been sent to the government of Ghana by the US government on health data. Sadly, some African countries had already signed. When that came up at cabinet, I said to the cabinet, I said, that is not a health agreement, it's a data agreement. And we did a report in 24 hours and submitted to the president, and I'm proud that our president, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, wrote to the US government and said, take your money, Ghana will keep our data. We will not sign that agreement. Because a US mandated health agreement that asked us to submit Ghanaian health data to US government for the next 30 years gave us no control over our own citizens' health data, and said that any dispute we had will be settled by US law and not Ghanaian law. Tell me why they need that data. Very simple. US health tech companies are producing medication that is not working for the African continent. And they need your health data to be able to design the medication that they will sell to you and make profit. And that's why they offered 100 million, 200 million to all African states to hand over our African data. Members of Parliament here, if your governments have not signed yet, lead the opposition to that. African data must remain African. And in the governance void, what we see is that who makes the rules? The platforms that your kids are on, that our children, the young people of our countries are on, who makes the rules? Facebook sits in California and determines what is called community standards. Whose community? Does the Facebook community standards set in California understand what the people of Ningo and Pram Pram call community? Or do they know what is community in Hashem's constituency in Malawi? Or in Sarah Opendi's constituency in Uganda? Did they consult you to understand what the community standards of Africa are? No. They set those community standards. And the things that are values to us are excluded by that standard. And the things that our community standards truly abhor are allowed for our children. YouTube's content policies determine which African cultural videos are demonetized. You hear about our young people and our young content creators. One of the biggest challenges I have as minister is that my young creators say, Sam, get us monetization. We want to make money from the content that we put up. The whole concept of monetization is about control, economic control. If our young content creators know that a certain kind of video will get them more money from the platform, they will push that kind of video. What kinds of videos get the most money? Videos that show disrespect for the elderly, videos that are anti our African values. Meanwhile, videos that educate and videos that promote African values get less monetization on these platforms. So it's a systemic thing that you put up, you're a content creator and you put videos that build an African identity, you don't get money for those videos. You put up content that is anti-African values, you get money for those videos. And that's the incentive behind the monetization. And that's why as a continent, as one country, we can't fight this. Ghana alone cannot fight this. Nigeria alone cannot fight this. We must become united at the AU level to say this is our position and bring them down there. And let me tell you, honorables, we underestimate the amount of power that we have. By 2030, 1 in every 3 human beings is going to be African. The AI data sets need our data. And so we must bring them to the table at our own terms. The world's richest man, Elon Musk, is afraid to travel to Brussels. Why? Because the EU will arrest him if he sets foot in the EU. The EU is about 460 million people. That's just like West Africa. Nigeria alone makes up almost that number. Africa is 1.5 billion people. Apple is one of the biggest technological companies in the world. The EU, a coalition of 450 million people said, we're not happy that you have a different type of charger, so change your charger. And Apple had to listen to the EU. Now, Apple is going to begin to make new phones that allow you to take out the battery. Why? Because the EU said so. That's the power of collectivity, the power of unity. If 450 million people in the European Union can do that, imagine what 1.5 billion of us in the African Union, if we make our voice one, can do as a continent. We will shape these platforms, but they divide us, and we allow ourselves to be divided. Until we unite, we cannot fight this battle. TikTok's algorithm is shaped by US-China wars. Nobody's talking to the African Union. Meanwhile, their biggest users are on our continent. Only 33 of our 54 member states have data protection laws. Honorable members, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Ghana has a law, Nigeria has a law, Malawi has a law. Just pick that law and also replicate same. Because we have the Malabo Convention. We are more alike than we think we are. Who is enforcing all of this? African parliaments, and that's the heading I put there. I said African parliaments have ceded our legislative chambers to Silicon Valley. Let us reclaim our position as legislators. We make the laws. We determine what our people must do. Let us not cede our power to Silicon Valley. What can we do? Ghana has already, I'm using Ghana because I serve as Minister for Ghana in that capacity when it comes to digital technology. In 2012, we passed the Data Protection Act, as far back as 2012. And as we speak now, we're reviewing that law. In 2020, we passed the Cybersecurity Act. As we speak, we're reviewing it again. Because in 2012, when we passed our data protection law, there was nothing like artificial intelligence or artificial general intelligence. So we're bringing it up to speed to meet the realities of today. In 2023, we passed an online safety policy to protect our children. In 2024, we passed the Family Values Bill. It wasn't accented to. We brought it back again. We passed it last Friday. And we'll keep pushing until the president accents to it. And just in April this year, we did it in 2025, but we launched the national AI policy in 2026. And what we've done with our AI policy is to mandate that our AI policy must respond to Ghana's own indigenous needs. And so we're not going to import AI wholesale. It must sit within our national plan. The 3 pillars of action for Africa's Parliament. And I've taken my time to break this down. I'll share the slides as well. But 1, digital family protection. We must make sure that age-appropriate design codes for all platforms 7 minors. We can pass the legislations, and they will have to mandate with it if we do this as the African Union. We also need to make sure that platform liability for child harm and harmful content exposure. Today, you know that we don't take our time to read the terms and conditions. But the terms and conditions state they have what they call a safe harbor provision. That safe harbor provision has been taken out in the EU. But what it means is if you can establish that your child was affected by content online, cyberbullying led to either a medical condition or the suicide of your child, that the platform is liable. But in Africa, they have a safe harbor provision that says even if the platform led to the danger that was caused to your child, you cannot bring any action against the platform. And we're sitting down as African legislators and doing nothing about this. We need to wake up and begin to deal with this. We must have family values digital standards in our local African languages. We must push for that. We must have mandatory digital literacy that's rooted in our African cultural values. And so the second one is on AI governance and cultural preservation. We must mandate AI impact assessments for education and public services. Here in Ghana, we're doing that. Right now, I have an AI focal person in every one of our 23 government ministries who reports to my ministry, and we're making sure that every AI deployment across all of government runs through our ministry to be sure that the quality and the standards that we've set are maintained. Yes, I'm getting pushback from the tech society. I have Ghanaian techs who are fighting me. But I know that behind that sits the big tech that is not happy about what we're doing. But look, we will not have a digital Wild West in Ghana, and we must not have a digital Wild West in Africa. That space must be regulated, and it will be regulated in a way that does not stifle innovation, but in a way that protects our African identity and the innocence of our children.
I think it's wonderful. We give him a few minutes to conclude, right? More? Right, so, bash.
I'm running through because I know the time is...
Right.
Moderator, I'll wrap up in 2 minutes. We must publicly fund digital oral translations and traditions and indigenous knowledge. We're building, and President Mahama announced a $250 million National AI Compute Center. I took that memo to cabinet with one vision. Ghana cannot continue to build AI innovation on the back of Western models. We want to own our own models and build our own models. And the good thing is we're not doing this just for Ghana. We're doing this for Africa. We're building an AI compute center that will serve the entire African continent. And so working with our universities, we're building national language models. We're building in 7 key Ghanaian languages. And then we're also building in African languages. We're building in Creole, we're building in Swahili, we're building in Hausa, in Yoruba, because we want to be able to share what we build from Ghana with the rest of Africa, because we must own our own computing infrastructure. The first phase is $250 million. We're trying to push it. We're going to build what we call the national language model, the Ghana charts, that will be able to, because we spoke about Agric, we spoke about all the other things. Today we want to give solutions to our farmers, where you don't need an Agric extension officer to go and check what is wrong with the plant. You can use your mobile phone to scan the plant. But the question is, many of our farmers do not speak the languages in which these applications are in. So how do we put those solutions? And that's why for me, a language like Dagbani, or a language like Bono or Chi, or Nzima, which deal with our key farming areas, we're building national language models in that, so that when a farmer who is farming cashew in our Bono region, which is where we farm a lot of our cashew, takes that application, he can speak in Bono to the application. And the model, AI model we have built in conjunction with our universities will be able to interface with whatever platform it is, get the solution, and give him back a response in his mother tongue. That is what technology must do for us. And so I urge you to all adapt this. We must fund this, and we're doing this with our academia. So your universities are critical in doing this. So we're having KNUST, University of Ghana, University of Cape Coast, work extensively with the traditional authorities. Because you see, when you take the traditional language, and for those of the Ghanaians, if you take the word nu, which is written NU with an inflection in my mother tongue of Ghana, depending on how you say it, the meanings are different. When you say nu, it is man. When you say nu, it is drink. Nu is water. So the same NU, depending on the inflections that are put on it, could mean multiple things. And that's why we must work with traditional authority to explain and own this. Data sovereignty and cross-border data flows, very important for me. We must make sure that our data is stored locally. Many of us are adopting all kinds of AI systems and fingerprint systems, and our national databases are sitting on servers in Northern Ireland and in the Middle East. That must end. African data must sit on the African continent. There is a reason why the US does not allow any US citizen data to even be hosted in Europe. And now the EU has also passed a new resolution from this year restricting the hosting of any European data outside of the EU. Because data centers have now become a critical thing. At the last ITU meeting in Geneva in May, I moved a resolution which we are going to take to PP, which will be sponsored by Ghana, to exclude data centers from during periods of warfare, like the way hospitals and schools are. Because today those data centers are the ones that power your hospitals and your schools. And we saw from the US-Iran war, data centers sitting in Bahrain were attacked. There's a reason why data centers are being attacked. Imagine if your national immigration database is sitting in a foreign jurisdiction and that data center gets attacked. What happens to your national sovereignty? But even as we talk about national sovereignty, we must be able to agree on what cross-border data we want to flow, especially as we push the African Free Continental Trade Area. So we would strike a fine balance between allowing seamless flow of data, but also holding what is critical for our national sovereignty. And I think that what we must do is to ratify the Malabo Convention without delay in the countries that don't have it, and we should have a pan-African digital governance body with treaty-level authority. I think that that's very critical for all of us. These are the details of the three different pillars I spoke about. I'll skip that. A compact for African family digital sovereignty, a call to like-minded legislators. This is where I think we must go. We must pass a Digital Family Protection Act in your parliament. So these are the 5 things I want every MP in this room to take back home. A Digital Family Protection Act must be passed in our various countries. We must establish a parliamentary AI. I'll just go back to maybe the AI is not happy with the things I'm saying. We must establish a parliamentary AI and digital oversight committee with family protection in their mandates. We must have those committees in parliament. We must ratify the Malabo Convention and enact domestic data sovereignty legislation in countries that have not done that yet. 4th, we must refuse trade agreements that compromise African digital sovereignty and data rights. We must refuse such agreements in our parliaments. It makes no sense for anybody to be offering you support for agricultural help and adding sexual and reproductive health rights as part of the terms and conditions of something in agriculture or trade. What is the correlation? We must scrutinize this very well. And let us be clear, there are people who walk in the corridors of African governments, power of African governments, who are compromised and who will smuggle this in. But we stand as gatekeepers in parliament to ensure that we protect the African value. And the 5th thing is that we must co-sponsor an African Interparliamentary Digital Family Protection Declaration. And that's what the African Charter that I hope we pull out of Accra from this summit will do. That when we finish with that charter, we lay it before the African Union. And I hope we lay it before the African Union before the end of this year. So that by February next year, when President Mahama becomes the next AU chairperson, he has something on his table that he has to push as an African Family Values Charter on the African continent. What Ghana is offering, because yes, we're saying do this, but we've already taken steps as Ghana. We can share the Family Values Bill as a model legislative template. We provide Ghana's Data Protection Act as a drafting resource, and that's something I'm available to give you our existing legislation and even our current draft that is going to Cabinet, which has been updated to deal with AI and all of those. We'll continue the Pan-African Parliamentary Forum on Digital Family Protection. This must not end. Sarah and Hashem's, this must continue. We must lead the drafting of an African Interparliamentary Digital Family Compact, and then we must advocate jointly, not just at this platform, but at the UN-IGF, at the ITU. And Ghana is hosting the Africa IGF this year. We're hosting here in September. I'm going to make sure that African family values is part of the conversation at the African Internet Governance Forum. And so a covenant with African prosperity. These are my closing thoughts. The children of Africa did not ask to be born into a digital age. They did not choose the algorithms that shaped their worldview, the platforms that colonize their attention, or the foreign ideologies that are being pushed into their homes. That choice belongs to us, the legislators, who are their parents, their grandparents, their uncles, and their aunties. We owe that to our children because our parents did that for us. We cannot be the generation of legislators and parents who failed the African continent. Every parliament that passes the Digital Family Protection Act, every legislature that ratifies the Malabo Convention, and every lawmaker who stands up to Silicon Valley and says, not in our homes, you will be fulfilling the oldest covenant in African governance, that obligation that we have to protect the next generation. That is who we are. I thank you very much.
Wow. 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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.